speaker of this segment is Dr. John Miller. He's a research assistant professor of coastal and ocean engineering at the Center for Maritime Systems at Stevens Institute of Technology. In that role, he also serves as the New Jersey Sea Grant Coastal Processes Specialist and Assistant Director of the New Jersey Coastal Protection Technical Assistance Service. And here he is. Thanks.
Thank you for that introduction. As I said, my background is in coastal engineering, so I probably have the least experience in terms of the transportation sector of anybody here. But there's a lot of things that we do at Stevens, both on the academic research side of things, but also through my involvement with New Jersey Sea Grant and the Coastal Protection Technical Assistance Service, that of course is impacted by sea level rise and climate change. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those activities, I guess, today. All right, so again, I wear lots of hats depending on what day it is. As a professor at Stevens, we're involved with studies of inundation, flooding, risk assessment, how climate change and sea level rise is going to impact the risk that coastal communities receive. How is that going to impact our ports? How is that going to impact our roadways? Our communities, all sorts of infrastructure. So we do the research through my involvement with Stevens. New Jersey Sea Grant, some of you in the room may be familiar with it. The European group may not be. New Jersey Sea Grant is an organization which is funded through NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Essentially, it's a branch of the agency which is charged with taking the research and bringing it down to the stakeholder level so that it can be implemented by communities to improve, for example, their resilience to climate change and sea level rise. At the same time, part of Sea Grant is also taking the needs of that stakeholder community and relaying it back to the research community so that the communities can actually get products and things that are tailored to the types of information that they need. And we've already heard today about some gaps. That's a huge part of what we do, is try to take those gaps, go back to the research community, and fill as many of those gaps as possible. The New Jersey Coastal Protection Technical Assistance Service, which is a mouthful, is a service which was set up by the state legislature essentially for us to serve as kind of advisors to New Jersey's coastal communities. Again, previously it was mentioned that a lot of times, particularly at the very local level, communities lack the technical capacity to do certain things. We've heard a little bit about GIS today. At the local level, a lot of communities don't have the money or expertise to work with GIS. So that's kind of a role that we feel is we're sort of the advisors. We work with communities to implement measures and techniques to reduce the impacts from coastal storms. We also work with them through meetings and workshops to basically let them know all the different tools that are out there, how they can take advantage of some of the capacity that may be available at the county level, the state level, or even at the federal level. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that they may not necessarily be aware of. I'm going to go through some of the slides pretty quickly. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and answers. I realize probably the most important part of this is that we get a chance to answer some of those questions. So real briefly, this is New Jersey. Somebody else had I think Mitch had the night shot of the entire country. Well, this is a night shot of New Jersey. It's interesting. It kind of coincides with Jeff's, the corridors that they studied, the Northeast Corridor, essentially going down from New York down to Philadelphia. You see all the lights in that general vicinity, but also if you look along the coastline, you see a lot of lights all the way down the coast. So we have a very big population. Population density in these areas are increasing. The colored plots, the blue and the greens, basically are population density and increase in population in the coastal counties. So you see a lot of people here. It's a lot more people are moving here. So there's a lot of issues and problems that come with that. Among them, of course, transportation issues. Aging infrastructure, roadways not necessarily designed for the capacity that they have now. This is an excerpt from a report done in the UK by, I think, Robert Nichols. Looks at the populations most at risk from climate change in the year 2070, taking into account sea level rise, but also Also population trends. So in the upper table, I think New York is somewhere around 17, and we have a significant population that's at risk today, but population growth in areas of India are outpacing in New York. So in 2070, there'll be more people at risk there. The bottom chart is presented just to kind of contrast that. The bottom chart shows the assets that are at risk. So while population-wise, New York may be 17-ish, it's around 17, when you look at the assets that are at risk, and that of course takes into population growth, sea level rise, but then also economics. You see that New York is right up near the top. I think it's number 3. I can't read my slides from here. So there's a significant population that's at risk. There's also significant economic assets that are at risk. All of these economic assets need to be moved around on roadways and things like that. So transportation is obviously a critical link in all this. Again, just some damage and disaster slides to ooh and ah everybody. You see, climate change doesn't need to occur for infrastructure to be at risk. The upper left-hand picture is from LaGuardia Airport in the 1950 hurricane. So you see there's significant flooding of the storm. Since then, we've had about a half a foot of sea level rise, so you can add water on top of that, basically. Then you see some flooding from one of the storms, I believe, in Trenton. Trenton seems to be popular. And then the kind of the lower left is flooding from the 1992 winter storm, one of the bigger nor'easters that we've experienced in the last 50 years, showing flooding into the PATH station in Hoboken. Right, so this is the kind of thing that you can find kind of everywhere. This is just a sea level rise viewer. It's kind of a very simple raise the elevation of the water, what gets flooded kind of thing. So I just pulled this off of the University of Arizona's website. So basically the red areas are areas that will be flooded if sea level rises 1 meter. Sea level rises 1 meter, or if there's a storm surge of 1 meter, either or. It's just water level going up, so it doesn't really matter. So with 1 meter, you can see basically the red area extends all the way up to that roadway which runs kind of north-south along the coastline there. That's the Garden State Parkway. It's one of the main evacuation routes for the communities in the southern part of the state. You can see that there's significant areas obviously at risk with potential critical impacts to the roadways, particularly in the southern part of the state. If you want, you can do things like, oh, let's just add 3 meters for why not? I don't necessarily, this is kind of a bit of an extremist view, but you can do things like that. But you can see, obviously, the more water, the more sea level rise, the more storm surge you get, the more areas are impacted, including, again, a lot of these critical north-south roadways, particularly for evacuation routes in the southern part of the state. You can do the same sort of thing in the more urban northeastern part of the state. So here you see a shot which contains Manhattan in there, Staten Island, Jersey City. I think Newark is in there, Newark Airport. Again, same idea. The red areas are the things that are flooded at 1 meter of sea level rise, or 1 meter of water, basically. It's not all that bad, but you do see that some of the critical port facilities, in particular in Bayonne, I don't know if I can reach out there. I can't. No. Well, we start to get some of the fringes of some of our critical port facilities that are inundated at this level. Also, some areas of LaGuardia Airport. So if you get a big storm tomorrow, you might not be able to leave. And again, you can do the same thing with go up to 3 meters if you want. You can see the situation gets much worse. JFK Airport, in this case, is completely underwater. So the point is that there's a lot of critical infrastructure, including a lot of transportation infrastructure, which is potentially at risk, both from climate change, but also storm surges. Some of the things that we've been involved with recently in terms of identifying the vulnerabilities, Stevens has been involved somewhat with FEMA. They just updated their risk analysis they just did a flood study to update the risk maps, basically for the entire state of New Jersey, as well as portions of New York. Those maps are kind of in the final stages of being finalized. They've Basically, there's different models that they apply. So they've done a lot of the coastal storm surge flooding. They've already done. Now, propagating waves over land and things like that. But FEMA is updating their maps. It was greatly needed in the state of New Jersey. The maps that are generated are basically static images, snapshots in time. Don't take into account climate change. So previous maps that we had were 20, 25 years old in some areas. Obviously, things have changed a lot since then. The new